Hello, welcome to the Phantom Electric Ghost podcast. See?
Hello.
Hi.
Hey.
So we are recording. This is the Phantom Electric Ghost podcast. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So you are from East Africa, Uganda, right?
Yes, yes, I am.
And you are genre fluid, Afro-pop, neo soul, R&B, reggae kind of mixture
Yes.
of genres. That's your style of music.
Yes, it is.
And so you I guess I was reading your bio, and you had started singing as a child. Then you stopped, and then you picked it up again in 2019. So, when I asked the first question, I always ask is like, when did you first get into music? So, at what age did you actually start singing?
I started singing and songwriting at around 10 years old. I used to do it for school plays, and we did a lot of theater and those kinds of things. But once I entered high school, I kind of dropped it because it wasn't like a priority. And I picked it up again later on in university. So that's why there was a time gap.
Yeah, so I seen. I was actually looking at your Spotify and your latest album, Passion, from
Yeah.
2020. So I was actually going to start with that record, but so so when you got into 2019, I know you had some releases prior to Passion,
Hmm.
and I see that you had this song I can't stick with.
Yeah.
So is that then that seemed to have according to I saw there was a lot of plays on that song. So was that like the first big return? Is that song, or were there other songs that were
Yes.
before that?
That was actually my first single, the studio recorded single that I released. I didn't have music before that song especially.
So that's the first one. So,
Yes.
so maybe I'll start with that one. How did that song come about?
Uh, Honestly, it came about very spontaneously. Initially, I had just started recording and I was getting the ropes of it all, and I had written a different song to kind of release first, but when I went to record it, I wasn't really feeling it. So I
Mm-hmm.
kind of ended up feeling a type of way about the song that led me to search for more beats and stuff. And I found this beat, and literally in 30 minutes, I was done with the song. So I was like, yeah, definitely, this is the song I want to release because it came with ease, came with more ease, and
Yeah, that's interesting because I'm a producer, singer, songwriter myself, and
nice.
sometimes like the songs you plan out that you really labor
Mm-hmm.
on, you're thinking it's great, and then suddenly you get this really kind of flash in the pan idea just comes out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times, and I've been recording for like 20 years.
Wow.
The songs that I kind of come out of nowhere that I didn't really plan out
Yeah.
tend to be better than ones I planned out.
Literally, that's I don't know why it goes like that, but that's literally how it goes. And I do my best to kind of stay in that state every time I write. I try to stay kind of fluid and open about it so that whatever
Mm-hmm.
comes through organically and with ease and not too much planning and meticulous.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of times what's interesting, what I've done is I just record a lot and
Yeah.
then I go back and I pull things from other songs
Yeah.
and bring them into other things. I
Exactly.
kind of
You spoke
create a
it.
library of my own. Yeah, you create a library of your own reference points. And I think in your mind, as a musician, you've got all this stuff in your head. You got your favorite
Exactly.
artist. You might love Marvin Gaye, you might like Sade. You've
Yes.
got these things in your head, right? And then suddenly something triggers, like a poetry line or something happens, and somehow in your mind you pull that together.
Definitely, definitely. There's so many times I tend to actually go and seek out other artists that probably I've never listened to or that I usually listen to, and just try to get some source of inspiration to listen to them and their melodies and how their execution and different parts of the song to kind of get inspired to do that the same kind of bring the same kind of element into mine. So definitely I do that too.
Yeah, can I hear elements of like the Fugees?
Really?
Like
Yes, I love Lauren Hill, actually.
Lauren Hill. I'm hearing some Macy Gray. in the tone that you're doing.
Yeah.
And you know, just in the Sade too. Cause I mean, I'm hearing the neo soul aspects.
Wow.
Yeah,
Thing is,
I'm hearing some.
thing about it is I don't even consciously do it. Like I don't intend to like sound like certain artists. It's more or less just how
You're in the space, yeah.
exactly. It's literally just how I end up interpreting it in my own way that probably ends
Yeah,
up
I don't think you're. Yeah, you're not cloning them. You're in the spirit. You're
yeah.
like, he's like, you know, because there's like genres like blues guys, right? You
Mm,
know, if I play blues or jazz, you play like Coltrane. Doesn't mean you're like copying Coltrane
exactly.
or Miles Davis, but you're kind of in the spirit
Yeah.
of bebop, or you're in the spirit of fusion, and there's a certain like parameter to that music, and you
Mhm.
can be in that zone.
Mhm.
So I kind of look at it that way. I feel that you're in that zone, um, and it's not that you're. It's really interesting how you interpret it, and
Yeah.
so you got your own. Every artist has their own spin on it, you know, of whatever genre they're in,
Mhm. Mhm.
um, and I think that's really cool because that's how we all kind of feed on each other, and all
Exactly.
music kind of
Energies.
comes from the same
I'm a
place.
big energy person. Like I like being around people that I could kind of feed off of, like in terms of they have just good energy, great vibes. That kind of gets me in a level at a level that I don't know. I feel like creating more. I feel like more ideas are coming through. I get to kind of, and that's why I like collaborations because I feel like you get to mix with someone else's world and their own style and their own interpretation of expression. So it's like, it's really an experience. I like it. I love it so much.
So, do you, as a singer songwriter, are you primarily like focused, you know, on your vocals and the top line, or do you actually bring in like demos where you have like full songs you kind of worked out on your own, or do you work with producers and kind of do the top line and the vocals as your primary? I was trying to determine like where are you in the mix? Do you actually play any instruments on, or is your voice your instrument?
Currently, my voice is my instrument. I have a keyboard, but I haven't really gotten the hang of it yet. Usually, actually, how I started initially was I would go just online and literally look for. So I initially have to just listen to a beat, then write. I don't just write and then fit a beat in there. At least I haven't approached it like that yet. So it's like I
Mm-hmm.
usually just listen to a beat. I try to immerse myself in this beat and create melodies that flow with it. Sometimes I would go against the grain, but in a way that is kind
Mm-hmm.
of melodic to the beat still. So
Yeah.
I try to be creative with that in that sense. But in terms of the producers, I do actually focus a lot on the delivery too, because so many times you can have the idea, but when it comes time to deliver it, it's probably not as what you pictured it to be or how you thought it would sound, and sometimes you have to kind of go over it again and go back to the drawing board and decide if that's you want to go through with it or polish it or whatever. So yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm in the world I'm in. I'm a piano player, a keyboard player,
Nice,
and so
nice.
like I kind of come at it from you know, keyboard, synthesizer, basses, guitars. I'm more of a, you know, musician. I'm less of a vocalist. I mean, I kind of do. I mean, I do my own vocals, but I'm not primarily a vocalist. I happen to be an artist that can. I do sing my own work, but it's not my top
Yeah,
talent. It's my other capabilities. And it's interesting when I talk to like singer songwriters or vocalists, you know, the voice is an instrument.
literally.
And you know, you Marvin Gaye, you know, Michael Jackson, you know, Whitney Houston, all the great singers, you know, they might not have played
Yeah.
instruments per se, but you know, Marvin Gaye actually did play drums, but but it's interesting, you know, that how singer songwriters or vocalists approach, you know, beats, and you know, so when you work, do you primarily get like your producers to send you like demos of beats and song structures that or are you looking for them, or you work with them and
Usually,
then collaborate?
yeah. Usually I with the instrument part of it, I feel like I definitely want to learn another instrument first. Like I feel like it would sort of elevate my vision and my creativity. In terms of the beats, I've actually just started doing demos now because I'm working on collaborations with producers. So it's like I have projects where it's like me and the producer, just like four different beats, four different songs
Mm-hmm.
type approach. But usually I just think of an artist, like an artist that probably has melodic. I'm very heavy on melodies actually, so I usually come up with
Mm-hmm.
melodies quicker than words. So it's like I tend to lean on things, melodies that make me feel something, melodies that kind of spark something in me. And I think of artists that have had songs that have done that with such melodies. So I type in the artist, so I'll probably be like, let's say, Janae type beat or Summer Walker type beat. It's like different artists, and you end up with this array of like beats from all kinds of producers, and you just figure out which one, you know, I figure out which one kind
Yeah,
of
yeah.
speaks to me. And if none does, then I'll really just, I don't force it either. So it's like, I'm just curious to see what's there.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's a different approach. It's like, yeah, I can see like as you go further, being able to, if you get a MIDI keyboard and you get like a digital audio workstation, right? I'd
Yeah,
ask you about that because that's what when you, as a singer songwriters or a lot of independent musicians, then you can kind of become more of a control
exactly.
over your vision. Yeah, because then you can do the drums, you can do the bass, you can do all the keyboards, you can just put them on the
Yeah,
grid, and then you have a really good. You might not be have the best arrangement, but at least you've got like your ideas sketched out,
exactly.
and then you can there refine it with a producer. Can say, well, I could bring in some
Yeah,
really good string players, or I could bring a good bass player that could really, liven up that bass line, but they
yeah,
can understand where you're coming from,
yeah. And I
and
usually
so
like,
that kind of gives it.
sorry, sorry.
Yeah, that's cool.
Oh, I was
Go
saying
ahead.
I usually like want the producer to have as little work as possible, if that makes sense. I tend
Mm-hmm.
to want to have to I create like at least 80% of the story before the producer becomes involved, so that I feel like I kind of put it on me to make the
Yeah,
song up to par regardless of whether how good the producer is, because like right now I'm in a town where there's so many self-made people, like self-made producers, people that have learned things on their own, self-taught, sorry. So it's like everyone has a different quality of sound and different approach. So it's like it reached a point where I had to make sure that regardless of the producer I pick, I've sort of brought this song to life up to this point where like even the worst person would not mess it up. Like
yeah. Because sometimes like a producer tends to have a certain
mm-hmm,
style, and some artists, what I've seen is like some artists that don't have a very good vision for what they want will allow that producer to kind of put it into that
mm-hmm,
framework,
mm-hmm.
and then it sometimes radically changes their original thought.
Exactly.
And sometimes this well, if this person producer has a big name
Yeah.
or they've been hitting on the playlist, people are willing to kind of, well, I'll kind of push my ideas down,
Mm-hmm.
and then but a lot of times we a lot of times independent musicians nowadays, like, people want their vision,
Exactly.
right? You want your vision, so you don't necessarily want some this kind of guy's got like a bunch of top playlist
Mm-hmm.
hits. Doesn't mean I want to put my song into that style.
Exactly.
I still want to maintain my own style.
Definitely. I'm glad that you understand
So I
that.
see what you're
Yeah,
saying.
literally.
Yeah, because you can get caught up in that, especially if you start, you have agents and record companies. If you start
Yeah, so many
doing
people
well,
involved. Like, yeah.
then suddenly they put you on that train. It's hard to get off.
Yes, I remember when I went back home actually, because I kind of like discovered this whole different back home. I probably don't sound like the artists there, so it's kind of more of a contemporary sound. It's like an alternative sound for back home. So it's like they
Hmm.
didn't kind of receive it as they love the music, but they kind of it's within. I don't know how to explain it, but they didn't
Yeah,
embrace it
yeah,
the way they would embrace like the local artists there, right? So I found them kind of trying
yeah,
to mold me into that. Like they were like, oh, maybe if you
yeah,
sound a
yeah,
bit more, like this, or if you kind of bring this language into here. And I get that people do have to connect and relate to your music, but I just don't believe that you need to change someone's creativity in order for that to happen. Like,
Yeah, because I mean, you might have a wider audience where you're hitting like the European
exactly.
market, you're hitting the American market, you're hitting the Asian market, and so if you just narrow it to your local market, like if I just narrow to New York
Yeah.
City, right? I'm in the Northeast U.S. market, right? There's a whole different vibe in L.A. There's a whole different vibe in
Yeah.
Nashville. It is a whole different vibe in Louisiana. So if you just build your song to be like, oh, it's a New York kind of
Mm-hmm.
vibe, well, then New York's a big place. You could do really well, but you might not be well, have it spread
Exactly.
out. So sometimes it's better to have, not as much a local, tent to
Yeah.
it because it's more,
Yeah.
because then you have a wider
Exactly.
reach,
But
sometimes.
what they mistake it for is that I'm open to trying all these different kinds of styles. That's the thing I also like about the way I approach it. I'm not rigid to be like, okay, I can't change this and I can't speak like this. It's just I'm open to it, but that's not going to be
Mm.
my standard. Like it's going to be like I'll do a song
Yeah,
for
yeah,
my people, I'll do a song for people that want to hear this from me, but then I'll also keep on doing like things that I genuinely want to be part of. And because at the end of the day, I want to be able to share my music with my people and with everyone involved. So it's like I do listen to things like
hmm,
that, but not to the extent that it changes my entire style. Just to the extent that, okay, let me do a song or two that I know these people it will highly resonate with them. So that's kind of just how I approach that type
yeah,
of huddle.
yeah. That's kind of a feel like I'm as a synthesist I'm big into like the Berlin sound that kind of came out of Kraftwerk and what Bowie
Yeah.
did, and Brian Eno as producer. So there's a lot of aspects of what I do that has kind of this kind of Bowie-esque Brian Eno, Kraftwerk
Mm-hmm.
sound. It's kind of like new
Yeah.
wave. That what so there's a certain new wave sound that kind of comes out of Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's German, it's English, it's got this kind of thing. But then I've got elements that come out like Parliament Funkadelic and James
Yeah.
Brown, which you kind of merge that soul and
Mm-hmm.
funk with the electro, pop that you can get out of synths. And so if you take those, you can. Yeah, I think a lot of people today, like you're saying, you're kind of genre bending. That's kind of where things are. Like where a lot of acts today are mixing hip hop and jazz
Exactly. And that's
and
the beauty
rock
about it.
and fusion. And, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because I get that.
Because like I actually do like that I am creating something people are not used to hearing, or that people are trying to understand and relate to, because I do like new things. I like creativity, and to know that okay, someone can say, there's no song that I've genuinely enjoyed like this song. It it makes me feel better. Like it gives me more inspiration to keep on keeping on. So I feel like
Yeah, yeah,
it is important to create new things, and people find it hard to be different so much. Like I feel like so many people want to blend in and just okay, this person did it,
yeah,
so if I do it the exact same way and do this exact like this, I'll reach where they are. And it's like you have to remember this person probably didn't know what they were doing when they did it, and it was probably new when they did it. So it's like a whole different, you can't rely on someone else's sound or story to kind of put you where they're at,
yeah.
because they had a level of authenticity that they had to add to that, which you're not bringing. So it's like definitely that's just how I view it. I feel like
Well, I think if you look at music history, you look at like the big innovators, like
yeah.
Stevie Wonder. Stevie Wonder with like songs in the key of life, he was going kind of against what Motown normally did. You know, he created these big, vast, progressive, fusion and rock and all these different elements that the Temptations and the Four Tops weren't going that way, and he was doing something totally different. But he was such a great creator that they trusted him because he's kind of like that story with Prince. I mean, Prince at 17 years old was allowed to be his
Yeah.
own producer just because he was so dynamic and he just had a vision. And I think like if an artist comes in with that kind of clarity in their vision, it's hard to kind of stop
Literally.
them.
Yeah.
So I think it's like it's kind of like a certain level of self confidence, and some people sometimes look as
Yeah.
arrogance, but sometimes like if you know what you want, you
And
know what you
I
want,
really
you
admire
know.
people like that because it makes things easier. It makes it easier to mold whatever it is you're doing because you have that intent, you have the intention, you know what it is you're going for, compared to just freestyling it. I mean, definitely there are times I kind of try to balance both. I try to be very confident in my sound, but then I also try to enter like um genres that I'm not comfortable with because it puts me in that space where it's like, okay, what can I do with this?
Yeah.
And it kind of opens up my mind. So I feel like, I don't know, definitely, fuck, I've lost my train of thought. But
No,
yeah,
but I see what you're saying. Like if you collaborate with somebody and you go into something like well, maybe you didn't really know how to do funk
exactly.
that well, right? Or you don't have disco
Yeah.
totally down, right? And so if you want to go back and do like a Bee
Mm-hmm.
Gees like song, you kind of got to pick up
Mm-hmm.
that vibe to be able to be like in the Bee
Yeah.
Gees space, or to be in like a James Brown or Sly Stone
Mm-hmm.
space. You got to have a certain
Yeah.
kind of feel, or it won't sound
Exactly.
authentic. And so then if you're artist, you can kind of push yourself. It's like I have never really done funk, but I love funk, and I'm gonna go kind of find somebody that can do it and learn,
Yeah.
you know. And that's kind of
That's
cool
dope
when
that
you
you
do
brought
when you
that up
push yourself.
actually, because literally I have like me and some a group of friends, we created this sort of like band. I don't say band because it's like not instruments, but like just a group, and like we do type 90s type music because like we noticed fundamentally where our sound is 90s, like it has that 90s groove to it, and we really wanted to enter like
Yeah.
all these kind, because what happened is we'd always link up and would all just would freestyle all the time, so we'd play beats and they ended up being like 90s type beats, and they would keep playing on like
Mm-hmm.
shuffle, and we ended up with all this whole bunch of songs. Some were funk, some were like it's literally from different, not even just 90s, it was just like different eras, like from back then. And
Yeah.
somehow it just made it added up, and we're just like, yo, we need to like make this a thing. And so we're trying to work on that too. Like I have that space to be in that type of like mode and fully express myself in that version, on that side of things, as compared
Well,
to
it's good
like
to be in a
Afro beats.
collective.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's good to be in a collective like group of
Yeah,
musicians. I think it's really, collaboration and being in groups where there's
exactly.
multiple
And
artists.
it was
You
mostly like
kind of
an experimental space for all of us, because it was like, okay, right now we obviously, none of us are 90s sing, like we're not experts at what we're doing at this point, so like we're just up and coming, and it's all, we're independent, we're trying to discover our sounds. So it's like we needed to create this space amongst ourselves to kind of just be comfortable experimenting, pushing bounds, like going to genres that we probably think, damn, that's kind of not in my, let's say, generation. Like my generation probably doesn't listen to this type of music or that type of sound.
yeah.
But like just based on our own curiosity, we're like, wait, what can we do with this? And that's kind of how that rolls. And I also have spaces where it's just complete Afro beats, like just literally vibes
Mhm.
on vibes with Afro beats, and everyone just like people from Nigeria and Ghana and different places of from Africa, just like literally freestyling and trying to. So it's like I try to just create all these different spaces where I can adventure into different genres, and that's why it's hard for me to kind of
Or you,
categorize my sound at this point, because it's like I don't know where it
yeah.
ends.
Well, you're totally in the space. Like as an African American, like we're in within the U.S. Like African Americans, we've been responsible within the U.S. for like multiple genres, from the blues, jazz, rock, hip hop,
Mm-hmm.
rap. But we all know it comes
Yeah,
from Africa. When I'm talking to an African artist, and it's like a lot of
yeah,
African Americans, we don't have the
mm-hmm.
Afro beat down, because we have what we've interpreted and then turned into what we feel it is, but
Yeah,
we were never there, right? So we have this kind of feel for Africa, but we were never in
mm-hmm.
Africa directly, but we have this feeling, and then we create this music. But it's interesting, like you're coming from the
Yeah,
actual space, so it's a totally
yeah,
different sound. Um, and that's really cool that like a lot of African American artists try to get into the African rhythms and bring that into their music. But you're in a space where you actually have people
exactly.
that
And the thing
have
is,
that
if I'm to be really
capability.
honest with you, like that took a bit more work than you see R&B and all this, because my core sound is R&B and soul. So it's like I lean, I mostly I want to say it's because of my mom's influence, like the music she used to play and everything. So I just leaned more towards, like, Sade and all these types of artists. But once I heard Afro
Hmm.
beats, I was just like, yo, I need to be a part of this. Like, I feel like this is just like, it's just melodies with mixed with, it's just a whole a beautiful mess. And I'm just like,
Yeah,
how do, I had to be a bit more intentional while I was approaching it. And I knew I had to surround myself with people that were comfortable in it to kind of, again, feed off that energy and like, oh, okay, like now I understand how like you're just free flowing with melodies and kind of seeing what matches and just learning the process of writing Afrobeats. Like, especially even the writing process, it's different for them. Most of them freestyle actually, um, because it's like in
yeah,
the moment. It's like what you're feeling, how you want, like what you're thinking about, what the beat makes you feel. Yeah,
yeah. It's like
and it's
jazz.
like you
It's
don't
like
really
fusion.
need to put too many
Yeah,
words. Like you don't need it to be a whole story or just or like a whole interpret. Literally just vibes. Like, so I had to understand that being
yeah,
a storyteller, because usually when I write to tell some type of story. Like, I want you to understand where I'm coming from, like where it's going, like more or less. But like with Afrobeats, there's literally no like almost direction with it. It's just,
yeah.
you know, excitement,
Yeah.
dance.
Well, that's like what happened. Like if you look at early reggae before you have Peter
Yeah.
Tosh and Bob Marley, really didn't have the storytelling
Yeah.
that they brought to it. They brought to it this idea to kind of take like Beatle-esque
Mm-hmm.
song structure and then put it
Mm-hmm.
into reggae, which was not really doing
Exactly.
that. And then Peter Tosh and Bob Marley brought that to it, and then opened it even wider. And then you see like in America, you get like Peter Gabriel, and you get with Graceland, Paul Simon, picking up
Mm-hmm.
South African beats
Mm-hmm.
and bringing them into like rock music
Mm-hmm.
and expanding rock to have world beats and African rhythms. Um, but again, it's got the storytelling
Mm-hmm.
brought in, where typically that music maybe didn't have as much
Exactly.
of that, and the merging of it
That's actually
changed
how
it.
I think I also stayed authentic to myself, because if you're to listen to Passion, I'm still storytelling. Like, I'm still doing that aspect. I probably kind of
Yeah, they're
reduced
all
it, so I
stories.
wasn't so intense with the words and everything, but I still told the story. And I feel like that was just my interpretation of Afrobeats. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't try to become
Hmm.
someone, like
Yeah,
I didn't try to become Nigerian overnight. Like, it wasn't something that I was trying to imitate. It was just something I was trying to translate and interpret in my own expression. So it's like I still story tell, but it's like I do it to a minimal, because I am aware that it's just for like this is it's supposed to be a fun song vibes. Like, no one is really hooked on the lyrics word for word. So yeah, that's just me.
hmm. But I like Another
Oh,
Kind.
thank
I like
you.
the
That
song
song
Another
came
Kind a
naturally to
lot
me,
on Passion.
honestly.
Yeah, because that's kind of it's got that
Yeah,
singer songwriter structure, but then it's got and so I'm always been a big fan of
yeah.
female singer songwriters. Going back to the '70s, and listen to like Carole King, listen to the Carpenters, and listen to song structures that
Mm-hmm.
actually have stories. The thing about those songs back then is they actually are these
Mm-hmm.
kind of heart stories, and it's always been the female perspective in songwriting is different than when you listen to like a Bruce
Mm-hmm.
Springsteen or Bob Marley
Yeah,
or a Bob Dylan. It's interesting to get that female
yeah,
perspective in music. It's different. It's not so it's always like as I end up interviewing a lot of female
okay,
artists in the last 2 years, because I think there's a big
yeah.
canon of male artists, and a lot of women artists have not been interviewed as much as they should. So I tend
That's
to
dope.
interview more
That's dope.
female singer songwriters.
That's really dope. Actually, like I've, like you said, I feel like I've interacted with mostly guys actually within the music industry. I feel like it's mostly males around. There are times where I'll be the only female, like in the studio or just in settings that are like, oh, artists are here, singer songwriters are here. And I don't know if that's because girls
Hmm.
are, I don't know how people approach it, but most of my friends are boys, so it was easy to kind of like work in such an environment. Like it was
In the
very
world.
easy because already like my life was kind of like that. But I noticed obviously some girls kind of, they're more conserved. I don't know if it's conserved is a word, but like they kind of don't know how to be themselves with all these males here. Like it's kind of like, I don't know if
Um,
it's
but
intimidation.
you
I don't know
kind
what
of
it
just
is,
gotta be like,
but
yeah. I think at the male, yeah, I think men within the music industry have always kind of put this kind of wall up that they're like, everybody talks about Hendrix. They talk about, they
yeah,
always talk about all these men. You hear about like the Beatles and Hendrix and Bob
yeah,
Marley. It's all men. Then once in a while you'll hear about Ella Fitzgerald, or you'll hear, you'll hear about, the Supremes. You'll get here and there. You get these, major
exactly.
female artists. That Billie Holiday. Billie Holiday. I mean, Billie Holiday is like just as vital as
Yeah,
any of the jazz musicians, like Davis and everybody else. But people will tend to talk about Coltrane before they talk about Billie Holiday, even though Billie Holiday's in the same zone. It's the same level. And I just think a lot of women get intimidated sometimes
mm-hmm.
in the music space because there's so many men
Exactly.
running everything.
Literally, there's
You
just
know.
the producer is a man. The like literally everyone involved is just male. So it's like I remember intentionally seeking out like a female, like as in I want to work with a female artist, and there was a female artist in a town, in a different town from mine, and we met up, and I remember like we didn't even, honestly it was so refreshing because we didn't even like meticulously plan it. We're just like, okay, let's meet, play something and see if anything clicks. Like it was really just open minded, no one was trying to control the situation, because again I realized that I'd never worked with females. It was kind of like I didn't know what to expect, because like I just knew how guys did it. I didn't know how
Mm-hmm.
females. It was bizarre that I was in that position to begin with. So I was like, okay, let's see how this goes. And it was really, really refreshing because
Yeah.
like we were in sync in even like songwriting. We were sort of in the same depth. We're really all in depth with like what the topic was, what the subject. If anything, the
Oh, that's
story,
awesome.
it became this whole story of like this whole intricate story, and it was just something beautiful because I was just like, damn, like I've never really like related to someone like that in that sense lyrically, and just even when I write songs, because I when I write with guys, it's kind of different. It's kind of more, I know where I'm coming from, he knows where he's coming from. You know what I mean? It's kind of not, it's not
Yeah, yeah.
connected sometimes. It's just like
It's
at least you can
yeah.
both tell the story well enough for people to enjoy the song. But with the female, it was more like we were coming from the exact same place. Like we literally put ourselves in this scenario, and it just literally unfolded effortlessly. So I definitely know female singer songwriters. They're dope. I should literally seek out more. There should be more. I don't know why
That's awesome.
there's really.
What? Well, I think in America, there's a big movement, at least in the hip hop community,
I
where a
love
lot of
it. I'm
female
noticing, and I love it.
DJs and yeah, they're
Yeah,
kind of running the show now. They're more interesting and more
yeah,
vital artists are female in the hip hop rap community in the U.S. right now. Um, and even in soul music, there's more female artists that are actually doing things that
yeah.
are more innovative than the guys. Um, and so it's just interesting to me. It's kind of like if I, since I'm a musician, right? I play Moogs and keyboards and Hammond organs, and so if I get with a guy that's like a DJ, I don't really have that much in
Mm-hmm.
common with a DJ. But if I like hang with the guy like a
Yeah,
bass player or a drummer or a keyboard player, right?
yeah,
And if they're African American versus being, if I go and jam with like an African American band, I don't gotta
exactly.
tell them what key I'm in. I just start playing and
Mm-hmm.
they know what it is, right? If I play with some other guys, they start
Exactly.
asking me what key I'm in. I'm like, you you
Uh-huh.
you can't pick it up. You know what I mean? So right away, if I'm with like a black jazz drummer,
Yeah,
he's like right on it. He's like this a bass player. He just picks it up. I start playing chords. Boom. It's like that's such a
exactly.
really
It's so
comfortable
comfortable.
inspirational situation because you're with people that you're in sync with. So I can understand when you're with the female singer songwriters, you're kind of in the same zone, you know. It's always really help. It's helpful when you run into like soul,
Exactly.
like-minded souls when you're creative. Then you can really, you know, I think that's like what happens when you get like a band like the Beatles.
Exactly.
They all kind of click, you know. So it worked, and you know, the
Yeah.
Wailers, they all clicked, you know. So then when you've got a unit
You're
that
gonna create
clicks,
a
then you're
lot.
going to
It's
create really good
boundless.
work.
It's literally boundless.
So like because of the lockdown, because of COVID, are you kind of not able to do live performances? Or are you just doing stuff like recording and doing YouTube videos, and or are you trying to do live
Currently,
streaming?
definitely, there's no like performances, performing or any of that. Initially, I wasn't. I think I just started performing when this COVID thing actually happened. Like, I won't say just, but I was still in the beginning phase of like getting comfortable performing and stuff. So it's like when
Getting
it
shows,
happened,
yeah,
it wasn't like a huge like
big hit. Like some acts that were
exactly.
that depend on it, they kind of really hit hard. But like acts that were
Hmm.
just started with video, or just starting to get on playlists, they're not as affected as artists that kind of
Exactly.
make their money from
So it's
doing
like it
gigs.
wasn't really that much of a drastic change for me, but it's like it did slow down things. I ended up in spaces where like I just mentally wasn't present musically, like as in even creatively. Like I
Mm-hmm.
had blocks. I had several blocks, like creative blocks, and just random. I don't know. Like COVID really did a lot. Like quarantine, the whole quarantine thing kind of did a lot for so many people, and so many people would think, okay, you have more time to create and more time to write, but it's weird because you end up in this random space that you just don't feel
Yeah,
exactly.
we
Like
don't
you
have a
just
lot
don't
of
feel up to
interaction.
it.
Yeah, no interaction. I mean, songwriters depend on like
Exactly.
your life story. I mean, most songs are written because you're out interacting with
Exactly.
people and you write about it. So if you get stuck,
Hmm.
unless you took a journal before we got locked down and went back to your diary or something, you might not have as
Especially
much to
because you
write
fall
about.
into like a routine. Like literally every day is the same. Like you lose track of what day it is. It's literally all every day is every day. So it's
Yeah,
like
it's not the best
yeah,
inspiration.
literally you lose track of time, days. It's just, and on top of it, I'm doing my masters right now in public health.
Oh,
So
yeah, so
like
maybe
it's
focus
like
on that more.
if I'm not doing music, I'm doing school. And then after school, I'm just like, okay, let me just do Netflix now. It's almost just like just this space that is not productive as it should be. But I do call myself out on moments like
Hmm.
that and try to like get that spark again and realize that, okay, sometimes it's not about like, you have to be able to push through and just don't, throw your head down type situation. So it's like I do have to keep on picking myself up now and then to
But
like
some,
say
yeah,
like now I'm doing videos because I was like, damn, I came to a realization I didn't have visuals, and I'm like, I think this should be
yeah,
exactly, and I was like,
visuals
I
are
think this
so
should be
important.
my
Yeah,
next focus, like just getting my face out there, my vibe, like because some people already know my voice, but they don't know who they're like listening to. They don't know what my energy is like. They don't know, so all these things, and I was just like, let me try and portray that. So
yeah,
I even have another video coming out very soon. So I'm just trying off the same project. So it's like I'm just
awesome.
trying to get like a consistent like array of visuals for this project so that it doesn't really just pass me by, because so many people really loved it, and I was just like, I might as well you do this. It would be counteractive to just move on, because I really wanted to have like other music out. Like, okay, well, next, you know what I mean? Like, what's next? Let's do something. But I
Hmm.
got to realize that sometimes you have to let things marinate and just like, you know,
Oh yeah, sometimes it's good to go
yeah,
keep on working on the same project by adding visuals to it. Going and doing videos. Like as a musician, like I'm working on my next record, and as soon as I'm done
exactly.
with that, I'm
Literally,
working
that's
on the
how it
next one.
goes.
But sometimes you gotta stop.
Literally.
but then you got to stop and you got to say, well, you know what? I actually
Exactly.
probably should promote the current
Yeah,
record before I
that's the
start
part I
writing the
had to
next
learn
one.
the hardest because like my promotion would go for like 2 weeks only. And after like the first 2 weeks, I'm really like done with that. I'm like, okay, I feel like everyone knows what next,
Yeah,
yeah.
you know, to the next thing.
But now I'm just understanding because even with the visual, with this video I released recently, Emotion, there are people that think it's my first song ever. Like people literally, and I'm here thinking, yeah,
That they
everybody
never seen
probably
one before,
has
right?
heard this song, like because I've been getting feedback, and I'm thinking, yeah, obviously everyone is well versed with what's going on, but then you find people that had no idea, like completely no idea what you were doing, especially like people back home and even just in the diaspora, like. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh shit, there's this Ugandan doing this and this. Oh, there's this. You know what I mean? So the word actually spreads faster when there's visuals for
Yeah,
some reason. I didn't even I don't know why I was naive to that,
yeah,
but
yeah.
this showed me that because you know I it's more of like I'm on a trial error basis with this music thing. So it's like I literally try if it works, I pay attention to how it worked and why it worked. So I realized that visuals really get more
Well, there's a lot of bands they
yeah,
start on YouTube. You know, they
exactly.
start on Instagram before they even get on Spotify. You know, and they launch onto the music platforms after
Yeah.
they've started with like video. Um, and so then visuals are so important to get your stuff on TikTok, to get on Instagram, to get that YouTube video because that's
Mhm.
kind of like the big radio
Mhm.
play. It's like the MTV of this era is to get yourself on an Instagram reel or a
Yeah.
TikTok, clip. That's how you go viral. That's how you get the buzz. That's
Exactly.
how you'll get a booking agent to say, "Hey, I'll book you to the Viper Room. Or, I can get you into CBGBs because now
Exactly.
you've got a fan base."
Actually, people
Um,
internationally,
so it's always kind of like,
internationally,
yeah,
like people started hitting me up more after the visual, like especially from the US, which was peculiar. I was like, damn, I
yeah,
didn't know I could like really pull in people from there because that wasn't my initial target market. So I'm like, immediately the visuals came out, I started receiving a lot of feedback on this video, and they're like, what, we didn't know, can we talk to you, can we find out? So like everyone, it just brought intrigue, and I was like, oh, this is good. Like I really didn't, I thought just music
yeah.
was enough. I really thought if it's a good song, it will spread itself, like it will spread like a wildfire in its own.
Yeah, there's some bands that they're not into visuals and they kind of focus on the music, but the way the world is today, you kind of have to have that visual impact. Um, because like if even the Beatles. I mean, the Beatles. It was the movies. It was the movies like Help and the Yellow Submarine. It was the movies that actually triggered like the Beatlemania, um, because it was a visual of the band, and then fans connected with those visuals, and then then they actually connected more to the music. But they were like
Yeah.
the first kind of video band, um, and
Mm-hmm.
that idea
I
still
noticed. I think
works.
people
You
feel like
know,
they get a sense of you, or like of it's translates more. I feel like it just speaks to people better to see you and see how you're singing and how you are and your demeanor and all these things, because they'll relate more to the song. They'll add more emotion to the song and more attachment to it compared to if they just heard it in passing, like on the radio or whatever. So it's like I understand that now, and I'm trying to work on that actually. And also just collaborating with different people. Like I've really done my best to collaborate with different photographers. Like if you check my Instagram, I have this collaboration I just did recently with a photographer here
yeah,
that was like a magazine series, and just like the concept was just more or less putting letting people know how I think and process and just deal. So it kind of ended up bringing that aspect. So I just want
well, I think it's
people
real
having
important because
creativity. Just it doesn't necessarily have to just be, but also visual.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah, your Instagram is like really stunning. I like a
thank
lot
you,
of the
thank you.
photography you've been putting up is really good, and it's a lot of what you have to do. I initially had just been a SoundCloud artist, and I didn't even I just did the instrumentals, and then suddenly I started introducing vocals, and as soon as I put vocals, it went from like
Wow.
1,200 people to like 90,000 people. And because people don't listen to instrumentals at the level that they listen to stuff with vocals on it. And then I started doing videos, and I started, creating an image where I wear like a costume with like a phantom mask and all this like an EDM kind of thing where it's like this kind of dead mouse kind
Yeah.
of thing where I'm wearing like a ghost costume and it's like LED. As soon as I introduced the costume, then suddenly,
Wow.
I got the podcast. So things like different visual levels of me putting more
Further.
visuals into it got me
Yeah.
bigger base of fans, a bigger base of being able to get to people from my visuals more than the music. And it was interesting. It's like, okay, like when you do this stuff that actually,
Mm-hmm.
goes in and pushes the band, the band is the big thing I want to push, but the podcast is another way to do it. And, the visuals are another way to do it. But yeah, in this world today, musicians, because to the other question, because streaming services, I found you because you're on a
Yeah.
streaming service. I found you because you're on the internet, on Instagram. But the other part of that is, we don't, as artists, get compensated at the level artists used to. So, what are your kind of feelings about the kind of two sides of the fact that the streaming services allow you to kind of get out there, but then you have to find other ways to
Uh,
actually get
I
income as an
feel
artist?
like it's a type of compromise almost. I feel like you can't have the best of both worlds all the time, you know. And I feel like you just as long as it puts you where you need to be, the rest should be up to you
Mm-hmm.
or your team or the you know what I mean? Like just your it should be on your shoulders.
Yeah.
Obviously, like in terms of the pay, I would prefer if it was better per play, like in terms of the streaming. But like
Yeah.
it really is what it is, you know. I tend to just
Yeah.
take things as they are and not really focus on like what it could be or what you know
Yeah.
what I mean. Like I just kind of work with what I'm given, and I feel like just having my music on to say that my music is on Spotify, it's on Apple Music, it's like on all these platforms. Like to me, that's a good compromise. I'm just like it's really across the board. Like people can Shazam my songs, they'll get straight to the song. Like things like that. My lyrics are just uploaded on Apple Music as the song plays. Just conveniences like that make it. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it's what the record label used to say. They used to have an
True.
A&R person. They give you an advance, and then you have to wait to get your money back. So I mean, the old world was if they gave you an advance, if your next record didn't make enough money, you owed them
Mm-hmm.
money. That was the old world. So suddenly you think you're doing good, they give you like
Mm-hmm.
a small band might get like 100,000, but if their next record doesn't make the money, they owe the record company like 50,000. And so that's the world that it was. And so okay, yeah, they gave you a tour manager, they gave you a van, and they gave you a bus. They put a video on MTV, but
Wow.
suddenly they gave you a bill if you didn't make the money back. And so now we're
Exactly.
kind of more in
And
charge
honestly,
of our
and
career,
honestly, I do.
so we don't end up.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm scared of like. I don't say I'm scared, but I'm very cautious about record labels. I I don't know how I feel about it yet, to
Yeah,
be honest. But I just feel like at least, yeah.
and
But
it's
at least
smart to
we
be.
have like more control. Like I have, regardless, with or without it, I will still make a level of progress. Like I feel like it's my future is not in your hands, in their hands, in that sense. But if I do decide to go along with them, then obviously they can advance me at a quicker rate, like in a shorter amount of time than I would have done it if I was alone. But I don't know, all these strings attached. Like I don't know how I feel about all that. Like there's usually so many strings attached.
Yeah, the problem with the companies that they're kind of like looking for the next big thing, and
Exactly,
then
and then
after
you
a
just
while they
become reduced
disengage.
to like
That's the problem
I
because
don't even know what, and you're just trying to make money and make sense, and it's just too much pressure. I feel like
Well, what I've seen with a lot of people, a lot of bands I deal with have gone indie because the problem with the record companies, like they'll be big on your first record trying to get that single, but if they don't feel that you're really hitting it, they totally disengage, and then the legal hassle that becomes part of that situation can keep make you not be an artist anymore because suddenly you could owe them money, they could tie you up with lawyers, and then if you were totally indie, you could have just kept on going. But if you get in the situation with them, they could actually make it so you get so disenchanted and so tied up that you can't even do anything. And so a lot of artists I've talked to in the last 3 years, I've said, it's better for me to be indie because then I can just keep on doing the work I want to do. So it's kind of like, it's like you get the freedom to do what you want to do, put out what you want, when you want, make arrangements to, if you want to do sync licensing, with somebody, you want to collab with somebody, you don't got to ask your manager, you don't have to ask the label, say, oh, we're not, you can't work with that person because they're on this label, you know, you can do whatever you want,
but that comes with a price too,
unless they're restricted,
it comes with a whole lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
And I feel like I was kind of
you got to manage yourself better.
naive to that too, because like I said initially, this started as like a hobby. Like it wasn't something that I intended to get serious about at any point. Like I was open minded, but that wasn't my intention, because I was just like, oh, okay, I can sing, I can write, let me see what I can come up with. And after recording a few jams, it started building this sort of demand, like, oh, where is more music, this that. So initially I was kind of pushed into like making it serious at some point, because I was like, okay, if I'm not taking this serious right now, then this is not going to be a priority, and the demand is just going to stay there, and like it's just going to be a mess. So I was like, you know what, let me just stay committed to this and see it through. And once I took that on, I realized there was a whole lot I had to learn. Like, especially the fact that I'm still a student and this is a student town. There's very little resources. Like it's not like a major city. You know what I mean? It's not Budapest, because Budapest is the capital city. Yeah. So it's
It's
like
not like LA
it's
or New
literally
York.
like a uni town, and there's also people, like there's retirement homes, and you know what I mean? Like that's really the environment. So
Yeah,
exactly,
you're not in like Music City. Like if you were like in like Los
exactly.
Angeles or you're in New York City, that everywhere there's tons of places to play. There's tons of producers. There's the music press.
Exactly.
They're bloggers. Like if you show up in a club in New York, the bloggers, the New York Times, the Spin magazine, Rolling Stone
Yeah.
magazine, they got reporters hitting those clubs every night.
It's there,
So if
yeah.
you play, it's
Exactly.
boom,
But
you're gonna
here
get the
it's like
press.
you
You know.
literally have to start from scratch. You have to realize, okay, you have to pay attention to who's paying attention to you. You have to market your shit. You have to promote. You have to like be very intentional. Like you have to be very strict. I didn't even know it took so much strategy, and like I'm not necessarily business minded like in that aspect. So that's kind of where I ended up lacking a little bit, because I'm just artistic. I'm just here like for vibes, you know what I mean? I never really think of the business side of things, that okay, this
Yeah,
much
yeah.
time equals this much money, and this that. So I ended up having to like reach out to different people in my life. Like you see now, my mom is my manager, because like she's very good at handling money and things like that. So I'm just like, you
Mm-hmm.
know what, how about you take care of that and that side of things, and I just be me. But even with then, I still had more responsibility, like social media stuff. I'm not really crazy about social media, but it's like I had to really become like, and even now I'm still
Yeah,
learning.
you have to
It's
do
like,
more.
bro,
Yeah,
you have
you
to
have
have
to do
lights,
more
you
than
have to
what
do
you.
this, that, the other, and I'm just not used to like just being heavily involved, like having other people like really pouring myself into social media like that. So it's like literally I'm responsible for a whole lot, and as it goes, I learn how to handle things. And definitely, I have like a small team now, but even then, like it's literally a learning experience. I know I have to read a lot. I have to research a lot about everything that goes on behind the scenes, because I don't want to be caught off guard at any point. Like So many people have approached me. I've already reached signed contracts with
Yeah.
them based on like random things relating to my songs being used and stuff like that. So it's like just even being aware that I need a legal team, I need a lawyer, like all these things. Like, damn, it was a bit overwhelming
Yeah.
in the beginning, but now it's kind of, it's sort of like taking its own pace and I'm understanding it as I go. So I'm not even like in a rush. I'm genuinely here to understand my journey and like see where it takes me.
But I think it's a good place to be as an artist. Like the
Yeah,
primary thing is that you love the art, you know, and then
exactly.
when you love the art, the other stuff starts happening, and then you can kind of incrementally build your team and build your understanding. It's just the history of the music industry is kind of fraught with like really big artists
Mm-hmm.
getting kind of taken advantage of. You know,
Mm-hmm.
if you look at big like the Beatles, they
Wow.
had one of the worst royalty rates ever. They were hardly
Mm-hmm.
getting any money, but they sold so much that they
Wow.
didn't realize how much they weren't getting. They were so
Compared,
big, but
yeah.
they were getting like pennies, you know, on the record, but they were still coming in with tons of money, but they
Mm-hmm.
weren't getting what people get today. They were getting
Wow.
like, 70% less than what you thought they would have been getting. But they made so much money, it didn't seem like they weren't making money. I mean, and an artist like Hendrix, he was hardly getting any
Mm-hmm.
money from his record sales. He was getting it from his touring. You get like hundreds of thousands of dollars for his live performances, but hardly any money. And there was like millions of dollars
Yeah.
that were being like stolen from him by his management. And so I've kind of read the history of like rock and roll. It's full of, all these artists from Motown to
Literally.
jazz artists, are like
Literally. So
all
even
getting ripped
I heard
off.
about Lauren Hill, I think, and
And
there's a
it's
couple of artists that I was so surprised that like how did that happen to this artist? They were huge. Like there's there's a lot that just happens behind the scenes that even
yeah.
they probably were blind to until the last minute. And it's just, you know what I mean? We
Well, a lot of
just
times
want to
musicians
create.
we
Like
just want
that's,
to play.
is that too
A
much
lot
to
of
ask?
and sometimes it's like, well, I didn't read the first contracts, and then I
Oh,
found out that
so tragic.
suddenly they're taking 70% of the money and they're going to keep it for like 100 years, and I can't get it back. And it's like this stuff that people didn't
And
realize because
I
some
genuinely
artists were
just,
like, okay, I'll
the
sign this so I can play.
sliminess of it all
I'll sign this
disgusts
so I.
me, honestly. The fact that there's people that are just ready to sort of like do that to you, like to your art, to
Yeah,
what
do
you're
that to you.
doing. Like it's
Yeah,
just
you
like,
would think that.
damn, like
Yeah,
this could
you
have
would think
been,
that.
it could have been something. It could have been something, and it could still be further. Like, why would you have to do me like that? Like, it's wild
Well, they just want to take they take the
of
effort that
your
you
work.
do and they try to
Yeah,
take the majority of what you did of your work
you know
and
what
take
I
it and they're
mean?
like, okay,
Like,
well,
damn.
what do you bring to the table? Because like
Oh my
if you're not
days,
really bringing it
it's
to the
just a
table, it's like,
mess.
why am I paying you? Yeah, because I mean, yeah, a lot of what I look at, like, I look at distribution contracts, and then I look at,
Mm-hmm.
sync licensing, and then I look at like booking agents and PR people, right? So it's like if I'm going to put my money
Exactly.
into something, I'm going to put my into a proven PR person, a
The
proven booking
results,
agent that can
yeah.
actually get me the show and make sure that they're not ripping me off. Like if I go to New York and I do a 400 seat club, that they don't try to
Mm-hmm.
pay me for 200 seats. Because that's the kind of thing that the industry does. When I first started playing, I went to a show and I actually was smart enough to have my
Wow.
roadie count the number of people coming in. And then they came and told me there were only 200 people. They only wanted to pay me for 200 tickets. Well,
That
my
is
roadie counted like
wild.
404. And so it's like,
Exactly.
but that's the kind of thing you have to be aware of because that they'll try to do it. They'll try to do it, and that's what's sad. Is like,
But
why
because
are you
of
gonna
that,
do
it
me
gets
like
me
that? You can't
so
be
paranoid,
honest,
like
you know.
I'm literally paranoid before I even step into anything. That's why I keep saying I'm taking my time because I feel like if I was rushing, I would make so many blind mistakes. Like
Yeah,
I
yeah. You just have to be really careful
literally,
because
and it's
there are
so
people out there
disgusting
that will
that there's
do what
people
I
that are
just said,
so
and they
selfish
do it
to
at
that
every
extent.
every,
Like it's
every
like
level.
why? Why would you do that? Unprovoked.
If they can get away with it, they'll do it. That's what it seems like. It's like if they can get away with doing it, like even the accounting on some of the, not to mention streaming services, but artists have
Can
had
you
to
imagine?
get
That's
lawyers to
wild.
verify the counts on streaming. Yeah, they actually go and check it against BMI or check it against your publishing company, right? And then they find out that they're way off, and it's like, why are you even doing? Why are you doing that?
Oh my days. And it's like if I'm
Because it's
happy,
like, come
you're
on.
gonna be happy. You know what I
But
mean?
it's like
Like
the fact,
I feel like if you give me my results, I'm gonna keep
yeah,
coming here. Like
yeah,
it's like why would you just it's just counteractive.
yeah. Why do you try to skim? Yeah, why is the skimming
Like there's
happening
enough
on
space for
an
everybody.
industry
There's
that's like,
enough
come on?
money
Is
for
it? I don't
everybody.
like the. I
There's
mean,
enough.
I
It's like if you're just patient and loyal,
yeah, yeah.
there is literally it's just time. It's just time that will tell how much you make as a collective rather than being selfish and like trying to skim off the top quickly. Just oh fuck, let me just get my own.
Well, it's just honor to me. Like people should be honorable. Yeah,
Yeah,
like if you're gonna get into a relationship with
exactly.
somebody
And respect
in a
it
business,
because
you
that's
should
hella
honor it
disrespectful.
and be honest. You know? Yeah, yeah. That's what I don't like about what's gone on in the industry. You always have to be careful because it
Exactly.
seems to be there's people in it not for the art,
Who are
and that's
genuine.
the problem. It's like you really got to find people who are really like
Yeah.
genuine and like really understand your art. Like as a musician, like it's really important that your
Yeah.
people around you actually
I actually read an
understand
article because
where
I
you're
was
coming from.
researching recently about just like roles of like team members and all these things. And it was just saying that your manager should be your number one fan. Like, as in, if exactly, they should be able to
Yeah,
like
yeah. They should be able
genuinely
to,
enjoy
yeah,
your music. Like, it shouldn't be just like, oh, okay, you're doing music.
discuss
Okay,
your
you know how to
music.
handle this. All right, let's do this. It should be something whereby they see your dream, they see your vision, they understand you and where you're coming from, and they love your sound. You know, and that's something that I normally wouldn't have thought about because I was thinking I was
They
like
don't
you
just
said
think of it
I was
as
just
a,
looking at
yeah,
okay who knows the business aspect, like
yeah.
who do I know that is business minded, but it really came down to like okay yes they could be business minded, but do they enjoy your music, do they love it, is it something that they can listen to without like
Well, yeah, if they're passionate about it,
exactly.
they'll find ways to get it to where it needs to be. If you get the person to just thinking of it as a widget, okay, well, you're thinking of the same thing as like I'm the same as a box of cornflakes. What, like so. I mean, if you are passionate about your music, you're gonna figure out,
Exactly.
oh, maybe you could play here, or maybe we could put
Yeah, and you're
like
more
a sample
proactive
into a
about it.
magazine because this audience would like it. Yeah, yeah, you're gonna have more ideas, more passionate,
Yeah.
and then they're gonna find ways to get you out there. But if they're just thinking it's like you're the widget of the day or you're the cornflake box of the day, it's like okay, maybe that's good for Madison Avenue, but that's you really want somebody that's gonna
Mm-hmm.
be that kind of
Exactly. They're
advocate. And
supposed
I
to
think
be
a lot
like
of the
they're supposed to be
great
your voice
bands
when you're not
that
there,
got
more or
pushed
less.
are
I feel like your manager literally.
yeah, the great bands that got pushed, yeah,
Exactly.
they got pushed because they had people that loved them. There were people that
Mm-hmm.
loved what they were doing, and they put them in front of people. Hendrix got put in front of the Monterey Pop Festival because like another musician,
Yeah.
like Chad Chandler
Yeah.
from the Animals, found Hendrix in New York, brought him to England, and then got him in front of like Paul McCartney and Keith Richards and Jagger and got him playing at all these
Yeah.
big clubs in London. And suddenly that really launched him. And he had just been playing behind Little Richard
Mm-hmm.
and all these soul acts, and he wasn't going anywhere. And then soon as like the guy, another musician from the Animals, actually saw him and said, "Hey, I think I can get you in front of more people." And he was just really
Mm-hmm.
passionate because he thought he had never heard anybody sound as good as Hendrix. And he like, this guy's got to get to a wider audience, and he just brought him there.
Exactly.
And that's the kind of
I know
passion you
this is
want
my
somebody to have,
interview, but I want to ask you a question.
because
Where do you stand with like let's say
yeah,
people that their small circle, their team consists of family members and those that sort of outsource, like non-family members or close friends. Like how do you where do you, what's your take on that?
Well, I think well, I think family Well, I think family members can have your best interest, but there have been situations where, like Beyonce's family, she had a problem with her father. So, I mean, it kind of goes to your family dynamic. If you have a
Yeah.
family dynamic where your family is, not dysfunctional, and you got a family where people aren't going to lie to you, then that's cool. But if you got a family
Mm-hmm.
where there could be power dynamics that aren't healthy, then that's not cool because but it
Okay.
kind of it's kind of like not one size fits all. It kind of depends on your situation with your family. If you got a really cool family and everybody's telling the truth to each other, then that's probably going to work really well. But if you've got a problem, if you got like an uncle or a father or a cousin or somebody that's not being truthful, it can be just as
Yeah.
damaging
But
as
I've
a
met
bad
people that
actor that you
are
didn't know.
really like tend to be extreme with it, like in the sense that they just, regardless of the family's intentions, they just don't feel like they should mix, business and family. And then there are those that believe that, yeah,
Well,
exactly. And then there
lawyers
are those
might
that
tell
would
you
say
that,
that,
like a lawyer would tell you
I
that.
think you can't have any, at least you have to have like one family member in there to look out for you or something, some blood in there. Like, yeah.
I think it's in the middle. I think it's always kind of in the middle. I think you should always have a lawyer. You should always have an accountant.
Mm-hmm.
You should have lawyers and accountants cross
Yeah.
checking stuff and telling you what's going on. And so you always have some kind of outside people who are kind of like
Mm-hmm.
gatekeepers, lawyers and accountants who are actually looking out for you.
Mm-hmm.
And then having an advocate, like a best friend or a family member that you really trust, is not bad. Almost every
Yeah.
great musician had like a brother or the cousin or the father or their
Mm-hmm.
mother
In
somewhere
my
in
experience,
the
in
mix
my experience, I would
supporting.
genuinely
Um,
recommend it though.
and so it's not.
I feel like there's there's just better. I feel like even just having my mom as my manager. I have a friend of mine, that one of my best friends. She's also like in my team, and it's just, I don't know. It's kind of they make it kind of safe. They make it very palatable, if that makes sense. Like everything, that all the challenges
Yeah,
you come across. Yeah,
I think if you feel safe with somebody, that's a good thing. That's I
exactly.
mean, like the fact that you say you feel safe, that's a really good thing because that's what you want. Because if there are some musicians that don't
Mm-hmm.
have good family and they kind of gotta get that safe place with a stranger, and it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to get somebody who's not blood
Yeah,
relations to have that kind of safe
exactly.
space. Because you never know what somebody's motivation is. And family members, they
Exactly.
like your blood, so the motivation is usually not in question. So, so that's not a bad thing. It's just
Yeah,
there are
you
people
know.
that don't have good family structure. so, so so if you have a
Mm-hmm.
family that the Jackson Five had a problem with the dad, had some issues where he actually maybe caused some
Yeah,
harm to the family, and so yeah, you never know. Like it kind of depends on the
yeah.
structure of the family if it's all coming from a good place. But it's the
Mm-hmm.
case by case. If you feel safe, that's a good thing. Okay, if you're not feeling
Literally,
safe, then
like
that's kind of
you
your
have to
first
really
warning.
follow your intuition on
you
these
know,
things a lot of
you know.
times.
I, yeah, I think your gut feel. I think people have an innate gut feel, and if you start getting a bad feel, pay attention to it. Because
Mm-hmm.
usually your gut is usually right, and maybe you can't put your finger on it, but
Exactly.
you like if you start feeling that way, you always pay attention to it. That's why I would say to any artist is like you start feeling something shady, don't let it go.
Mm-hmm.
Go like dive into it a little bit, you know, because it's real important. Because in the history of music, it's just like if you read all the history, it's a history where a lot of those people should have took those gut feelings because there's a lot of stuff that went on
Yeah.
that wasn't cool. but but it's great to have you on. This podcast only goes to like 75 minutes, but it's great to have you on. And we're good. Cool thing about our
Okay.
podcast is we're on 11 podcast platforms. We are part of Spotify, so this will go on to
Okay.
Spotify's podcast platform. It will go on to 10 other platforms, including Apple and Radio Public, Overcast, many, many
That's
more. It's just going to
great.
kind of automatically
That's really
publish on
great.
all those platforms right after I publish it. And we're going to send you the link to the Anchor version and to
All right,
the
I
Apple
appreciate
version
that.
and the
I
Spotify version.
really I want to
And
thank you for having me too, because
and you
we literally met off Instagram, and I was just like, wow, this is a dope opportunity, you know, to just be able to converse with someone that I like completely don't know, and he doesn't know me either. So it was very, thank you so much. It's my pleasure being on here.
well, yeah, it's my pleasure too, because this is the way in lockdown.
Yeah,
As a musician, I get to talk to other musicians, and not
about
being able to tour, this is my way of still keeping an outlet to
yeah.
talk to people about their music. And every musician's got a different sense of something, and
Mhm.
it's really a learning experience for me. Every
Mhm.
artist I talk to is like a really big
No, my
benefit for me.
pleasure. It's my pleasure.
So thank you for being on the show. Okay, thank you. And we'll talk to you when you have another project.
Okay,
We always bring
nice.
people on. We've had people on 4 or 5 times. So like when you
Okay,
have
thank
another
you so
big
much. I
project to push,
appreciate it.
we'll have you
I
on
think my
again.
next project will be, I mean, minus the videos that I'm gonna be releasing from Passion. My next major project will probably be early next year.
Mm-hmm.
I'm working with. I have a few collaborations in the works, and I'm just look. I don't know which one will drop first because I have
Awesome.
like two separate projects. So either one is good.
Okay. Well, let us know. Yeah, let us know which one you want to push, and we can kind of set it up so
Yeah.
it's around this time it
All right,
comes
that's
out,
great.
and
Thank you
we could
so
talk
much.
about it.
It was great talking to you and just like getting to know your
Okay, bye.
perspective
Bye. Have a great day.
and everything involved.
Well, this will be out in about an hour or less, and
All
you'll
right,
see it
thank
on
you.
all these platforms pretty soon.
Good
Thank
night.
you very much. This is Fam Electric Ghost, and I think this is a informative message for those of us who are financially challenged and need help making decisions. So, all potential homebuyers looking for refinance options need a tool to aid them with navigating the financial wilderness of the mortgage industry. Now, Mortgage Calculator Info gives you a no pressure, no sales pressure opportunity to discover mortgage related finance topics from the comfort of your laptop or your smartphone. So if you go out to https :// www.mortgagecalculators.info, and we'll actually have that link available. Again, I'll say it: https :// www.mortgagecalculators.info. There are multiple calculators. There's a monthly payment calculator, minimum income requirement calculator, home loan limit, and a DTI to figure out your front end and back end debt to income ratios. That's more complicated once you get into this. Now, even though I own a home, if I'm looking into a tool that I use personally, is the home loan limit calculator that allows me to see what it would take to trade up to a better home. So I think you should check out, www.mortgagecalculators.info, because magazines like Forbes and business channels like CNBC recommend that you take control of your finances. And the first step to get a better understanding of your mortgage knowledge with tools is going to a free site like this to be able to look at it on your own time. And then from there, if you want to go deeper into financial analysis, you could always get an investment advisor. But it's good to kind of get yourself versed on tools like this that don't cost any money, allow you to check out, without any pressure, and do some analysis on your own. So you're doing your homework before you go and make another decision. So it's the first step in that kind of path. So we encourage all of our PEG fans, musicians and artists and creators. We need to be smart about what we do for financing because we need to fund our projects. So being smart about your financial portfolio is a good idea, even though it might not be something that you're primarily interested in. And I think all of our fans could appreciate that as well. So thank you for listening to this little informative statement, and enjoy the rest of the program.